Kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Less Husky News, I think. Would that be fair to say, Drew? Kia ora whānau. How is it?
You are sounding a bit better today.
Yeah, I'm not 100 yet. I'm 95%. I've been negative for a week now, but it's just there's a bit of a chesty dumplings infection that kind of kicked on, had antibiotics, and to be honest, off to my first training session tomorrow at the gym. So good enough to do that. Good enough to get on with stuff. How are you, man?
Not too bad. Enjoying the weather.
Yeah.
It's a cautious feeling for Dunedin nights at this time of year. We've had 4 or 5 days in a row of temperatures and blue skies.
we had temperatures for 5 days. We actually had temperatures here, as opposed to those normal days where we have no temperatures.
Temperatures. You facetious, the horrible person.
What I noticed about the temperatures we got up to nearly 20 degrees. So it's in the car, 19.5. I instantly got an extra 100 kilometers range on my vehicle. Like just the difference of a 13, 14 degree day and a 19 degree day, 100 Ks range extra. So it's like, okay, I can see where the medium is for those batteries not to like life quite so much. And 18, 19, 20, she's a pearl, mate.
Yeah. Awesome.
Over the weekend, always going to have a review on a Monday. Started watching the Yellowstone series. You watched it?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Except because we were a few years behind, because they did Yellowstone, then they did 1883, and then they did 1923. So we've started with 1883. So we haven't started We're going to watch 1883 first, and then 1923, and then Yellowstone. And really enjoying 1883. It's really, really good. Really interesting. So stoked about that. So the only thing that freaks me out a bit is Yellowstone has 5 series, then there's 1883 and there's 1923. That's 70 episodes. So we'll probably be doing this until the middle of next year, maybe longer, who knows.
I was going to throw a new one at you. Claire and I are watching The Righteous Gemstones.
Oh, no, nothing about it.
Has that come across your radar yet?
No.
It's Danny McBride, which you might know from Tropic Thunder and Eastbound and Down. And that sort of
lots of stuff with the smoke the spliff crew out of Los Angeles.
Yeah, so you very much know the vibe. He's sending up American evangelical megachurch type stuff. Yeah, and it is very funny.
Maybe
very good.
For someone like me, might be even funnier. Who knows? Hey, we have had a huge response this week from patrons. Thank you so much for being a part of what we do. You guys already know that, what you guys do to come on board and help out with as patrons is absolutely valued by us, every $5. And as you know from last week, we are looking to expand. And whilst we're not actively saying, so give us some money now because we're going to expand, we know that will come with some more costs. So I think some people heard that last week and really got involved. So let me just look away to my list and say it's a huge thanks this week to Joanne Matthews, Alison, Gabrielle, Kate, James. I'm just giving the names they've listed as their, names I want to be called out by. So Kate, James, Yellow Dreams, Janine, Marie, Deborah Finberg, Stoney, Richard McElry, and Sheridan Smitham, who are all brand new patrons just from the last 7 days. Incredibly generous. Thank you so much. Also want to shout out to Grant Reese and to Erica Ehrlich and to Rachel Hannon, who all were already patrons but decided to up their patronage to a new level. So yeah, quite humbling, guys. Wasn't really doing a fundraising drive, but obviously you guys have heard and seen and decided to get behind it. So we're really grateful. Thank you so much. Really, really cool. And if you want to be involved, it's on the bottom of the screen at the moment, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. When we do get to the point of, starting to talk about a Friday night show, we will probably come to you and say, we're going to need a bit of help here and here and here, but it is something that's on the way. So thank you so much. We have 291 paid patrons, which I think is unbelievable. It also makes me think we're only 9 away from 300. I mean, just putting it out there. I'm just putting it out there for no real reason. So we're going to talk about a few things today. A very interesting article on RNZ today. Should New Zealand treat misogyny as extremism? So we're going to have a bit of a look at that and some listening audio from RNZ. We're also going to have a bit of a look at Andrew Little on health reforms from Q&A over the weekend, and have a look, of course, on Friday. We all got the sad news about the passing of the Māori King, and Matthew Tukaki was at the tangi today at the marae, so he's going to join us in a couple of seconds. But just before I do that, I see you pulled up a picture, Chewy. Is there something you want to jump in with first before we move on?
Yeah, just to set the tone for the rest of the evening. I just saw this pop up on Reddit, and I absolutely have to put it up here. Just some great. It just makes me laugh. Somebody's done all the political leaders.
Very good.
I think these are great.
What? Oh, that's a strange one.
What, the Winston?
Yeah, the Winston one looked like a strange one. I don't know how I feel about that.
Oh, it's like a life image. It's perfect.
I was going to say, I'm just going through my Instagram right now. Do any of those have any of the kind of vibe to what ours is, though? I mean, do any of them have any of that vibe at all? Oh, Grimace? No? None of those touch Grimace?
Lonely Grimace.
Yeah. All right. Alrighty, so lots of stuff to talk about tonight, guys. But let's first of all get to the very sad news from Friday. 69 years old, Kiingi Tuheitia passed away, Māori King. Yeah, shocking, lots of shock, especially because of the age, so young, 69, but was not of good health. And Matthew Tukaki has been at the marae and at the tangi. So let's bring him into the show and have a bit of a chat about it. G'day, Matty. How you doing, man?
Kia ora, boys. Now, I know we're going to talk about the morbidity of death in a moment, but I had watched the Gemstones, and I first watched it on an international flight because, and I was drawn to it. I was drawn to it because I played a game with someone on the flight with me about, well, if you had a porn name, what would it be? And not that I have ever wanted to be a porn star, but the game goes something along the lines of what was the name of your first cat and the street you grew up on? Yep. Or your first cat. Well, mine was Fluffy, and the street I grew up on was Gemstone Drive, of course.
Fluffy Gemstone.
I was Fluffy Gemstone.
Yeah, that's a good porn name.
But that is just, and also the other program you fellas might want to watch is Chaos, which is the new program on Netflix with Jeff Goldblum and Cliff Curtis. The Māori fellow from Rotorua there plays Poseidon. And I binge watched it over the weekend like I know I shouldn't have, but it was just crazy. And I'm not into Jeff Goldblum at any point, but and to be frank, I thought he was dead, but obviously that's just an internet rumor.
Very good.
So I just got back from the tangi hanga, and it was amazing. I mean, but I was lucky because I went on with the Cook Islands Prime Minister this afternoon of the New Zealand Olympic team, and also iwi Māori, so whānau from all around the mutu. For those who don't know what mutu is, the land, the country. And what it showed me is actually, with a complete diverse group of people going on to pay their respects, that was really the central theme of what Tuheitia, the Māori King, was talking about, which is kōtahitanga. And at the end of the Cook Island Prime Minister's speech, and there was a bit of cheekiness in there as well. If you know how the papai works in Te Ao Māori, there's always a bit of cheekiness. Of course, he wanted to make sure that there's something in Māoridom called the tuakana taina relationship. Your big brother, your big sister, you're the little brother, little sister, and the Cook Islands wanted to impress upon us that we come from the Pacific. Rahui Papa at the very end of all the whai kōrero today, who's leading on behalf of the Kingitanga, he basically said, "Oh yes, but gently remind you fellas that we just dropped you off on the way through." And so there was that. But there was also from the Cook Islands, they got up and they sang most beautifully, because at the end of every speech you sing a waiata. Out came the ukuleles. It was getting a little bit later in the afternoon. And then the New Zealand Olympic team, of course, they did a haka right in front of the Te Pāpaku, the body. And it was just incredible. It was incredible to be there.
Can you tell us a bit about the Kiingi movement? I mean, in my lifetime, there's been a queen and then her son, the king. What happens from here? Because we don't hear very often about, and here are the princes, the sons and princesses and daughters. We don't hear so much about the kind of typical royal lineage like you'd have when you're thinking about Queen and Philip and all those kinds of things. How does it work in New Zealand, and also what happens next?
So I'm loath to talk about succession while we're still having the tangihanga, but it's a very interesting thing. I mean, this is not like the Japanese monarchy or the UK with hereditary succession and all this other sort of thing. It's an elected role, and it just so happens that this particular whānau have been the whānau from which people have been elected from one generation to another. So that'll all happen after the tangihanga takes place. And I expect that we'll probably have a coronation definitely on Friday, which was the norm. So once the tangihanga and the respect of the service has been completed, that's when the business of succession, if you like, will take place. So respecting that, it's a different process than most European New Zealanders in particular will be familiar with. And there are some important people that play a key role in this since the formation of the tangihanga more than 100 years ago. And so that includes people like Sir Kiingi Tuheitia from Whakatūhia. Whakatūhia played a very large role in the establishment of the Kingitanga way back in the first Māori king. And so there's a bit of business to be conducted, but I think, first of all, it's about respecting the late king, putting him to rest, and then getting into the business of succession.
We're going to play some video from Andrew Liddell later on today from a Q&A and he was talking about as being involved with Waitangi settlements and stuff when they were in government. He was asked about the current relationship between iwi and the Crown as an observer on the outside. What does it feel like at the moment on the marae? What does it feel like amongst conversations? Because it's been a fraught relationship so far this year, iwi and the Crown, the current Crown. Is this helping? Is this hurting? Is this making no difference? And are we seeing all the political parties turn up? Or has David Seymour done his, my time could be spent better elsewhere, like he has with every other kind of cultural invite he's had so far?
Well, I think we're yet to see all of the politicians arrive. So like Rātana, like Waitangi, there is a specific day that is set aside, and I believe that's this coming Wednesday. Could be tomorrow, although some politicians, because they're also Māori, have already been onto the marae. So as I was going in the gate, for example, Willie Jackson was heading out the gate. And that's because he, in his own right, is an urban Māori leader. Look, it's interesting. I listened to Christopher Luxon on Saturday. Normally, traditionally, Saturday and Sunday, the first couple of days of tangihanga in respect of the Kingitanga, will be held over to the Hokainga, the local people. So Waikato Tainui would be in there first to pay their respects. And then they get ready and prepared to receive all the guests. So everything from the kitchens firing up to wardens and car parks and all sorts of different things. But I listened to Luxon, and he was nervous. He had a croaky voice, like he was genuinely pained by the death of Tuheitia. And I think initially I thought, is that an act? But the more it went on, the more I realized that actually probably this is self-realization for one of the coalition partners, the largest of them, that actually their relationship with iwi Māori goes back a lot further than the other two. And so I felt there was a sort of coming to Jesus moment for Luxon, that actually potentially we've got this wrong. Because what he was faced with is iwi Māori, and not only iwi Māori, but organisations. Even the king has sent his condolences, King Charles III, or whatever he is now. And that, I think, really showed the low-hanging narrative that's been in this current coalition government. The other thing that happened on that day was that Luxon took with him a series of former National Party leaders and ministers and prime ministers. So on the pai, or on the front row with him that day, was Doug Graham, who was, of course, is Doug Graham's middle name Montrose? So Doug Graham was there. Don McKinnon was there. Jenny Shipley was there. and there was a message from Jim Bolger, and actually the Rahu Papa, who I talked about before, who's one of the iwi leaders from Tainui, directed his response to Doug Graham, thanking him for working with Waikato Tainui in the initial settlement. And I think it dawned on Luxon, because I was watching his face, and it dawned on Luxon that, wow, there's some history here that I didn't even know. And maybe it's time for him to get back and know that on the pipeline with Luxon were also senior Māori public servants. I think I noticed a guy called Trevor Moiki from Treasury, and also Peter Douglas, who's been in the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet for a long time, and is also, I believe, the iwi chair of Maniapoto, which is the iwi next door to Waikato Tainui. Right. So I think surrounded by both the majesty, the sadness, but also coming back to that word kotahitanga of the event itself, there was a look in Luxon's eyes that said to me, yeah, got this one wrong, boys.
I wonder if it could be something like, if it's like with the passing of the king, you can see that the rest of the world value this cultural identity New Zealand has. That our own government doesn't seem to be valuing. I wonder if that's a bit of a wake-up call. And I wonder if, as you've said, it's a come to Jesus moment for him, apparently, again. We'll know that in the next few months.
You know, Pat, that's a really good point, because the rest of the world has seen condolences. It's been picked up on international media. You know, King Charles has sent his condolences. And, you know, let's face it, also the Māori king has been an ambassador for all things New Zealand, not all things just Māori, but he was in Paris only a few weeks ago for the Olympics. He's been treading on the boards at the Vatican with the Pope and all sorts of things. I mean, this is a man who has not been well, and yet he's dispatched himself, not at the government's cost, but his own cost, to go overseas at a time when he is ill. And after the Koronehana was over, which is the celebrations of his 18 years as the Māori king, of course, he was admitted to hospital for heart surgery that obviously he did not survive. So you know, you've got a human being that's given a lot to both promote New Zealand overseas, and the overseas territories and countries have respected that by coming to his tangi to pay respects. And the latest, of course, was the Cook Islands. Gosh, I wish I could sing like those Cook Islands.
Chewy, mate, you better jump in here. I'm going to monopolise the time if you don't.
No, it's fine. I'm just here with my thoughts. Look, you mentioned this being a bit of a moment for Luxon, and I come back to think about the amount of time that he has spent outside of New Zealand. And I mean, this seems to be just something that seems self-evident and obvious to me, that the Māori king passing is an important moment. Whereas everything that Luxon has had, he's had Māori culture through the lens of marketing. He's had Māori culture through the lens of, this is a political football that I can play. The Māori are a problem to solve. I hope you're right. I hope that this is a moment where he actually has some reflection, that it's not the two-dimensional idea he has in his head of what Māori is.
You know, interestingly enough, I think we'll look back on this moment in history as the moment that the tide turned on race relations in Aotearoa. It was going in a specific direction. So also on the pipeline with me this afternoon were mayors of a lot of the Central North Island councils, local government, many of whom have already now passed, you know, to retain their Māori wards and so on and so forth. I actually honestly think that New Zealanders have a bad feeling in their gut when it comes to the way that the Māori issue is being pursued by this current government, particularly the National Party members who have voted for the coalition, who will be thinking, well, hang on, with the likes of Sir Doug Graham and Sir Don McKinnon and Dame Jenny Shipley, mind you could have had a Mainzeal board meeting with the number of people there. They certainly had a quorum. But I think New Zealanders are tired of this now, and this is that watershed moment. particularly given the fact that this is not something you learn in middle management school. Yeah. You don't learn how to deal with the cultural issues or the nuances of politics in a way that has been thrust upon them. You know what? I tend to now think it's actually relatively straightforward to become a prime minister or a political leader. It's harder to nuance yourself into the relationships that create the complexity of nationhood. And I honestly think that they've missed the boat on what it does to create nationhood. And what's that? Because you have those things. You have statecraft, you have warcraft, you have all these different elements, And I'm not too sure that they understand what statecraft actually means.
Yeah.
And, can I just also say that the other thing that really, really I just loved to bits today was because, you guys know, and I think a lot of people know now, that I'm not that physically able anymore. And so I was genuinely worried about all the crowds and whether or not I might fall over or whatever might happen. And yet when I got there, I was shepherded through a very large crowd by the wardens. The manaakitanga and the way that they look after you was incredible. And that's a reflection of how Māori are responding not only to the King's death, but that's how Māori respond to things in general. It's like Cyclone Gabriel when the marae gets open, even though other marae just down the road have been completely inundated, or the Christchurch and Kaikoura earthquakes where the marae's opened and anybody was given a feed, anybody was given a bed to sleep on. And so I think New Zealanders are beginning to really, really now reflect on, hang on, these people, our neighbours, our brothers, our sisters, many of whom have grandchildren, mukapuna, and so on to Māori in their whānau now, are reflecting on this saying, well, is this actually how we treat people that treat us so well?
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Matt, we'll keep an eye on it through the whole week. I know it's been a long day for you, so we'll let you go. Thank you so much for joining us today. Yeah, I know that. We know that. So thank you for giving us a few minutes. We'll let you go, and we'll keep an eye on this through the rest of the week. And,
I kind of wanted to change my name to Fluffy Gemstone, but I thought, nah, stretch too far.
What was your porn name, Drew? Mine was, this is because our first cat was Muff. So so my porn name would be Muff Hillsborough. That'd be my porn name. What about you, Joey?
Midnight Bovary.
Oh yeah, you win. Midnight Bovary. Matthew Tukaki, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate a couple of minutes. Go to bed, sir, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Can't get the fun, mate.
All right, see you, mate.
Cheers, mate.
A few of the chats that have come through. Tawhiri for the super chat, thank you, sir, says Hongi Hika was asked by Samuel Marsden and other missionaries to declare himself king, but he turned them down because it is chosen by the community. And Brian, I think the super chat says Seymour is still there. But is still at the marae? Is he been there? Is he there for the day? Is that what we're saying?
Oh, no idea.
No. And there's one from Navigator. You can read this out because I'm not sure why it started.
Oh, okay. I just thought this was a good general comment. It was right at the start of the show. Was saying today that I've been a voter for years, and this is the first time I've experienced absolute loathing for our Prime Minister. I've always respected democracy and the people's choice, but not this time.
So I'm missing something. Why today? What's happened today with the Prime Minister that's caused this to be a point of loathing? Have I missed something, or is it just?
I think it's more just a general comment that Navigator
up to the eyeballs.
Just had enough at this point, rather than a particular thing that he's done. But it's there was something that I saw when the announcement was made. I'm gonna grab it. Yeah.
While you're doing that, we've got a small celebrity in the studio with us. Creaky Blinder joins us. Kia ora, Creaky Blinder. Creaky is a flat Earth debunker and science communicator out of the UK, who is, I think, at the moment using one of my videos where I talked about Antarctica and the flat Earth to take apart a few of those flat Earthers in a more aggressive way. So kia ora, Creaky. Thanks for joining us. Good to see you, buddy. Right, sorry, Chewie, I interrupted you. What are you up to?
No worries. I'm going to say this with no real editorializing or anything like that.
Okay.
That is the statement from Jacinda Ardern. You've been an advocate for Māori, for fairness, justice, and prosperity. You wanted children, young people, and those who've been left behind to have opportunities and hope. You worked tirelessly on building an understanding and knowledge of our shared history, and in doing so, strengthened Aotearoa. Amongst all of that, you made everyone feel welcome, including me. So that's what Jacinda had to say.
It's funny how... Sorry, you go. Sorry, bro.
I've lost my thing. And then by way of contrast, he is a fantastic king. He was king for 18 years, and he did a lot to strengthen kingitanga, and we're going to miss him, sadly.
It feels like that clip where you've got I'll try and find it just because it's hilarious. Both Barack Obama talking about them getting, and also then Trump talking about them making a kill. Same sort of thing. It's one's gracious and smart, one sounds like a moron.
And that came back into my mind when Matthew was talking about being statesman-like. So just haven't seen that from Luxon. This was a moment. And it just makes you think, like, he's come from a place of being a board middle manager, CEO, boardroom talk. It is a different skill set from being a national leader.
Yeah. No, it's so true.
And I see that every time, like he's at these overseas conferences at the UN and that sort of thing. He's in a different world from what he's used to, and it just sticks out. I even think Key was better at this than he was.
Good God, even Key credit. That's the New Zealand version. Here's the American version of how people, how different political people communicate.
You're right, it was.
The United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden.
I love this.
Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is dead.
The United States launched a targeted operation against that compound.
They did a lot of shooting and they did a lot of blasting, even not going through the front door. You think you go through the door. If you're a normal person, you say, knock, knock, may I come in?
After a firefight, they killed Osama bin Laden and took custody of his body.
He died like a dog.
But his death does not mark the end of our effort.
A beautiful dog, a talented dog.
We give thanks for the men who carried out this operation.
And I don't get any credit for this, but that's okay. I never do. But here we are.
May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.
And I'm writing a book. I think I wrote 12 books. All did very well.
It's just, I mean, that's more extreme, but when you see a communicator versus a tool sharing a message of import.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it there. I think people don't put enough value on leaders that can communicate.
Yeah.
That can reach out and touch a range of people with the words that they use and the way that they speak. Obama was really good at it. Jacinda was really good at it. And then the comparison that we've got is to business leaders. And I'm not saying that business leaders can't do it.
Yeah. I'm
just saying that a lot of these guys that come over from the business world thinking that politics is a fucking doddle, they're wrong.
Yeah. Because it's not about KPIs, because KPIs are about bottom line, and running a country is not about the bottom line. It's about providing service. Two very different things, which is probably a good time to move into our next conversation with Andrew Little on Q&A in the weekend. After that, we're going to have a look at they're talking about laws coming into the UK. I'll play the story from RNZ, but talking about sort of using extreme misogyny as being able to be charged as an extremist for being misogynist. It's an interesting kind of conversation versus where does free speech fall into that. So we'll get into that towards the end of the show. Let's jump into this conversation with Jack Tame. Gosh, actually, I've got all my things mixed up. Yes. So let's have a look at this, and this kind of, I see, speaks to what you were just talking about. They were talking because, of course, Little is no longer an MP. So he has the opportunity of being on the outside looking in. He was very gentle in this conversation. Like, I imagine if he was an MP, he would have been more cutting against what National has done. There was a few times he was gracious, which I wouldn't imagine he'd be if he was an MP. But they had a part of the conversation where they were talking about health, they were talking about costs, and they were talking about voluntary redundancies. Let's have a look.
This week, Te Whatu Order is seeking voluntary redundancies. When you look at the structure of the system at the moment, do you think there are too many bureaucrats relative to frontline staff?
We always thought that when you have 20 DHBs plus the various other organisations, and you got, various levels in the corporate services sector, you can probably see that there would be some surplus talent there. If you think about bringing together an IT system, so it's a national platform, it'll take a bit of time. We put a lot of money into it. Some of that's been cribbed back in this year's budget, but that was needed. Over time, there would be the opportunity to reduce those corporate roles and that corporate level. But in terms of roles that are there to support clinicians and free clinicians up.
And this is what we've been talking about. And everyone in the health sector who's contacted us says those people who are there to support the clinicians are the reason the system continues on. Get rid of those back office jobs, and it's going to fall over. And this is about what Little's about to say.
But in terms of roles that are there to support clinicians and free clinicians up to have more patient-facing time, I'm not quite sure what the advantage of that is, if that is indeed what is happening. So, we certainly need to have, I think, a good level of transparency to understand what is happening. If the sort of roles they want to take out of the organisation are those that actually support clinicians to provide the health care that people need, that's not going to help in the long run. It's not going to help with reducing waiting lists. It's not going to help with making the workplace or going to work each day as a clinician a lot better. So, look, they've got to work that out. But although there is some scope to take people out, it's not going to be every kind of non-clinical role is going to justify being taken out.
So there's part one, Joe. I've got about 4 little 60-second clips. You want to speak to any of that you heard?
It all absolutely makes sense to me.
Yeah. Of course. It makes sense to anyone who's sensible. Yeah. I said this last time we talked about this. We're hearing stories, and I've got to put it that way with a grain of salt, that there are specialists who are now having to fill in their own diaries and stuff. And whilst you might go, no, you can fucking fill in your own diary, it's like, $400, $500, $600 an hour specialist that the public's paying for. I don't want that person filling in their own diary. I want a receptionist, a PA, a back office person to be doing that job, so that $400, $500, $600 an hour specialist can focus only on the knees, because that's his area of speciality, not how to fill out his diary well enough. Next part of the conversation, they talk about the Māori Health Authority, which is, I guess, appropriate and stuff for the conversation today as well. So here's Andrew Little on Q&A talking Māori Health Authority.
You've lamented this government's decisions around the budget and funding for the health system. But of course, a significant change was made with Te Aka Whai Ora, the Māori Health Authority. So going back, Heather Simpson, the chair of the Health and Disability Review, upon which those reforms were modelled, opposed establishing a Māori Health Authority with full commissioning powers. Do you think that a Māori Health Authority without those powers would have had a greater likelihood of enduring through those changes in government?
No, because I don't think Māori would have accepted an organisation that was very limited in what it could do, was advisory only. And the reality is, and it's kind of goes alongside the treaty debate we're having at the moment. The reality is Māori wanted and actually need, given the health statistics that apply to Māori, to lead what is happening in the provision of health services for their people. It's a step towards tēnā rangatiratanga, and actually that is an issue, that's a principle that we have to, if we haven't already taken it seriously, have to take seriously. It doesn't compromise good governance, it doesn't compromise coherence. What it does do is acknowledge that in an area where a public system or a public service is underperforming for Māori, there is leadership within Te Ao Māori that can make a difference, but they've got to be given their head, so to speak, and be given that opportunity. And Te Aka Whai Ora was the opportunity to do that.
And now that's been taken away. There's a comment from Andrew Little coming up shortly, Chewy, where he is speaking specifically. It wasn't interesting to watch this interview as well because he's not a current MP. It's almost like Jack Tame had no reason to go after him. And Jack Tame plays a pretty straight bat. If you're green or red or pink or blue or whatever you are, pardon me. But this is no longer a lawmaker. So what you can't really go after him for decisions Labor's making today or anything. So it was a more of a kind of gentle, nuanced conversation around the issues of the day, which I found quite refreshing. We are going to talk about EB relationships, but Chewy, any thoughts around what you heard around that? It sounds like he's basically saying for the Māori Health Authority, the way it was set up was the best way. The public health sector is not serving Māori correctly. And so that was an answer, which I think we all know, but I think that's just what he's echoing, I guess.
Yeah, again, what seems to be a very common sense thing to me, it shouldn't be controversial, that Māori were getting really poor outcomes out of the public health sector. So their need or their request was, we would like to have more control over our own health because what is going on at the moment is not working for us.
Yeah.
And to see Andrew reflect that back and going, well, yes, this as I saw it as part of our obligations under Te Tiriti is, again, I'm not a crazy person. I don't see the problem with this.
Yeah.
Like it would be like, we're rolling out a task force to tackle this underperforming thing. It's putting more funding where it's needed to get a better result, and it's just the one thing that is slightly different in this is that the people that it directly affects are asking for a bigger say or the most say in it. And again, it doesn't seem controversial to me.
Well, and it's not controversial to us because we use our common sense, Chewy. And the reason it's been deemed controversial by some is because the people group asking for this are an ethnicity. So if it was women and they were asking for an improvement in the health sector, a specialized area within the health sector because breast cancer was terrible, and it was, the general health sector was not servicing that community well enough, and there was stats to prove that, no one would bat an eye. No one would bat an eye on a focus to this is not good enough, New Zealand. What's happening with breast cancer? It's not good. What's happening with prostate cancer? What's happening with lung cancer? Whatever, what's happening with motor neuron disease, which is what, took my mum out, is not good enough. So we're going to set up a task force, to use your word, Chewy, a special area, a special a group within the health system to attack those areas and make sure we get the stats up. Everyone would support that. And then when you say the group that needs the help is Māori, 30% of the population goes, what? No, all equal. So no. Lung cancer and motor neuron disease are individual things. They don't have to get the same treatment, right? It's very evident because of the stats we can look at that Māori and non-Māori are having different outcomes. Just like if you treated someone with motor neuron disease as if they had lung cancer, it would be a different outcome. And you'd go, maybe we need a specialist area for that other people group, which is motor neuron disease. And we're saying statistically, we need a different way of working with this other people group. No, it's not a diagnosis, it's a race, but it's the same root cause that this area of society needs help because the current system is not performing for them. And when you stop and think about it that way, a group underperforming needs help. Prostate cancer, fine. Motor neuron disease, fine. Lung cancer, whatever it is. People who have only got one leg, fine. Māori, no, absolutely not. That's how we always know that this is a race baiting from the right. And as we told you last week about various former ACT and New Zealand national leaders being called racist and not looking at, this is the reason why those characters get called racist, right? This is the reason, because all they want to see it be equal on is based on race. That's it. Chewy.
The other thought that's popped into my tiny little walnut brain just now is one of the things that the right will want to people to naturally gravitate their mind to is that if we give Māori this funding or their own health authority, like Luxon was saying, like we don't need to spin up an entire whole nother mirror image organisation for Māori, which it wasn't.
No.
That was the narrative that he wanted us to hear. He was either woefully misinformed, just reading what was on the piece of paper, or just outright lying to people. It wasn't that. But what he wants us to think of is that if they do this, it is taking away money and resources, and therefore worse outcomes for non-Māori, right? And that's why there's always such massive kickback against it. I will tell you right now that what has actually happened is that we have worse outcomes. We have now massively underfunded our entire health system. We have stopped new hires coming through. We're disestablishing roles. We are not replacing people. We're getting specialists to do jobs that they shouldn't be doing. We are wrecking our health system. And it's not the Māori health system that has done this to non-Māori.
Yeah.
It is our fucking government being saboteurs. I had a conversation today with a nurse who's just come back into New Zealand after being away in the NHS for 5 years. And she came back and she was like, it is better than the NHS here.
Right.
But it is very clearly going down the same path.
I might have the answer. Do you want to know the answer?
What's that?
And apparently, this national-led government wants to have everyone treated the same. So rather than improving the outcomes for Māori, what they're going to do is make it worse for everybody else. Hey, and then we're all equal and getting the same service, Chewy. So maybe their plan in all of this is to actually make the system worse, and then they can go, we made it the same for everyone. What, you made it worse? Well, you know, we can debate that, but now it's the same for everyone, which is what we always said we'd do, Chewy.
Yeah. We've God, our health system, it's just such a linchpin, right? And I would much rather have chat just pointing out that every time I make a prediction that I'm wrong and they start calling me Nostradamus. But the fact is, we have been calling this since before the election. I think if there's something that I've been wrong on, it's the sheer speed and reckless abandon that this has happened in. But I'm not wrong.
Always true. You have this gift of introducing the next item, because the next conversation for 90 seconds is they're talking about how fast the movement has been from this national-led government. That's the actual clip.
This government, it occurs to me, has moved very quickly to undo many or most of the big reforms introduced by Labor as government. How has that been for you, looking at those changes?
Yeah, I think certainly in those early months, I was stunned actually at just the stuff that was stripped out and stripped away. Now they'll say that, well, we promised to do that. It's hard not to feel there's a level of vindictiveness in some of what they've done. And it's funny, now they're talking about this massive infrastructure deficit and we really have to address it. Well, hello, we've been having that debate for some considerable time, and we had some measures in place to address that, but they stripped all of that out. Now they talk about lifting productivity and accepting there is a major issue about the financial implications of it, but the new Cook Strait ferries and the portside infrastructure that had to go with it was a massive productivity improvement.
Are these ferries, is this going to be, pardon the pun, the anchor that sinks this government? Are they ever going to go away? Are they ever going to be able to put that into the background and not have people pick it up to go? Speaking of dumbass, what you guys, are they ever going to be able to get away from that? I think not.
No, because I was talking about this with a mate of mine. They are going to have to replace those ferries, right?
Yep. So
that is a whole tail on the story. Every time there is a new thing announced, we'll be able to go back and go, hang on. And I would stake my reputation on this. We're going to end up with 2 ferries. Maybe they're secondhand, maybe they're new build. They'll be smaller. They'll have a lower capacity. They won't do rail. And we will end up paying more than the ferries that they cancelled.
Well, because the thing is, and this has been admitted in the House, I think it was Aisha Verrill who brought it up, maybe I could be wrong, to Nicola Willis, had to actually admit again as well that the ferries that they're looking at now is going to need new ports. So the reason they cancelled the last one was because of the ports, and that was the big runoff. They're not going to get ferries, it would appear, that will work under the current ports. So there's going to have to be new ports, or at the very least, a major amount of work done on the port. So yeah, we've been saying this since day one. We will either get like a much more expensive, well, we're gonna pay the same or more for a lesser product. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen.
So small tangent. There's a fella that came up for parole today. New Zealand's first person charged with sabotage. He was the guy that was going to take out North Island power structure.
Yeah, and the cell towers and that kind of thing, and Taupo.
Yeah.
Right.
He was targeting Transpower stuff because of vaccine mandates. Rah.
Yeah.
He did less damage to this country than our current government have.
He's a very interesting point.
Like they're saboteurs. Like that's the only thing that it can come in. They are sabotaging things that we own.
Yeah.
That are for New Zealanders, so their mates can come in and make bank off it.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point, Joey. All right, we're going to keep going with this and just get the last kind of 60 seconds of talking about how fast National has moved.
Infrastructure that had to go with it was a massive productivity improvement project. We need to move freight. We need to move people between islands. We need to move freight on rail and on trucks, and we need to move people, and we need to move them in ever-growing numbers. And so there was the opportunity to do that. That's sort of gone for now. I think what also surprised me is the willingness to strip away a range of measures and policies without anything to really replace it. And it just is setting us back. If they're worried about wasteful government spending, well, when you just cancel a whole bunch of decisions and policies that have been years in the making, well, there's your several years of investment in those decisions and policies. Just gone up in smoke, and with nothing to replace it. And all it does is set us back, and that's the disappointing thing about it.
And just to make clarity on that, what he's saying for the two National Party people who are watching us right now, what he's saying is, they always talk about not one piece of track was laid in the Auckland train thing. It's like, yeah, that's because they had to spend like whatever it was, X amount of $100 million, getting the permits, doing the consents, making the plan. Like when you build a house and you pay, it's typically 10% you pay your architect. So you've got $100,000 house $1 million house you're going to build. You pay your architect $100,000. You haven't laid a single slab. There's nothing been done, but you've already spent $100,000. And so this government's come in and gone, look at all the money they spent. They didn't do a single thing. It's like, yeah. And when you cancelled it, that's when the money was wasted. Just like if I was going to build the house, I got the plans, I looked at them, they look beautiful, and then I stopped the process, then I've wasted the money, not from doing that process. And that's what he's getting to there. There's another clip to come about the relationship between government and iwi, unless there's anything you want to jump in before on that, Chewy?
No, roll it.
Roll it. I would if I could. I'm just going to find it. There we go. I'm going to roll it now. You watch me roll it. That was smooth.
As a former treaty negotiations minister, how do you assess this moment when it comes to Crown-iwi relations?
Yeah, I think we are at we're actually at a very serious point. I think there's a lack of understanding about the path we've been on for the last 50 years. So if you think about 1975 and the statutory recognition of the treaty, you think about 1986 and 87, we allowed inquiries into breaches of the treaty back to 1840. You think about the Court of Appeal decision, the Lands decision. You think about the treaty settlement process that sort of took off under National in the 1990s. You think about the growing economic wealth and to some degree economic sovereignty now that more and more iwi and hapu enjoy. All of those things were ultimately going to change the relationship between Māori and the Crown and Māori and the rest of New Zealand. It had to, because what was the case in 1975 was wrong. We were in massive breach of the treaty. What we're seeing is a re-establishment of the mana, of the mana of Māori, of the mana of the treaty. And as that has happened, our Pākehā actually have to make adjustments. The whole reason why we introduced Te Arawhiti, why Kelvin Davis wanted that what was then the Office of Treaty Settlements adapted to that work of Te Arawhiti, was to recognise that the bridge had been built, but Pākehā were just a bit slow crossing it. And so we had seen that.
Note that the bridge had been built and Pākehā had been slow to cross it, not Māori. Remember, when we talk about this, we talk about things like co-governance. And remember, so often when we hear it in the media by various sectors of the political spectrum, they have it backwards. You know, remember, co-governance is a concept that's been with us since Europeans have been in New Zealand. Co-governance was Māori saying to Europeans, you can come to the table. That's what co-governance was. And now we're being told co-governance is the Crown allowing Māori to come to the table. It's the wrong way around. So to hear Andrew Little talk about the bridge is being built, but Pākehā have been too slow to cross it, I think it's an important thing to think about, and just to have in your mindset that, you know, sometimes these things get portrayed in the media. Mainstream media may not push back on it, or, you know, a David Seymour will shout it from the rooftops. And actually sometimes the absolute opposite is actually what is true and accurate and fair and appropriate. And this is one of them.
Pākehā were just a bit slow crossing it. And so we had seen that a lot of the change that happened since 1975, Māori had crossed the bridge, Pākehā less so. And so the work we were doing was to get a bit of equality in that. Once we've restored the place of the treaty, understood what the deal was, started making the changes within government and the Crown, and then understood what that relationship translates to on the ground. That's the transition we've been in. I think we're taking a step back at the moment. We'll get back on track, but we will.
Once this lot's out,
we will be a nation that truly reflects the vision of the treaty, the agreement that was made between Māori and the Crown in 1840. And hopefully by 2040 and the 200th anniversary, we will be at a place where we're all comfortable with each other, and we're comfortable with the way things are, the way we talk to each other, and that we are making this a great country together, because that's what the treaty was about.
Done.
Oh, that's a good vision.
Yeah, there you go. I've had my say during that clip, so you're welcome to yours, sir.
I just want to come back to say, like, he's exactly right. And I think the thing here is the reason that Pākehā have been slow to cross this bridge is because they see it transactionally. Like, what's in it for me? What's in it for us? We already had supremacy in this country. Everything that Māori seemed to be bringing up, bulldoze it aside, sometimes literally. I keep coming back to something I keep hearing, which is what is good for Māori is good for Pākehā as well. It's good for all of us. Like, maybe if we did more listening, we would have more abundant fisheries, more protected areas,
cleaner rivers.
Cleaner rivers. You know, different ideas around housing, different ideas around healthcare, different ideas around education, and maybe a better sense of self of what it is to be someone from this country in this place, rather than hundreds of years of just trying to be Little Britain of the South Pacific. You know, and never quite measuring up to that ideal. We spent decades trying to do that, and a lot of Māori has spent a lot of time trying to fit into that structure, Winston. And a lot of them have failed this impossible standard that they should have never had to partake in. It's I got to say, when he said, you know, 2040, the 200-year anniversary, like, God, isn't that what we've talked about with left governments, right, is they think longer term.
Yeah.
And then we have an ex-leader of the Labour Party, someone that held some very powerful portfolios that needed long-term thinking, having that in the forefront of his mind. Do you think you have anything in the current shower of saboteurs that we have in at the moment that are thinking anything further along than, God, we've got to get back in next time?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're all that's all true. So some of the chats that are coming before we move on to our last topic, Tawhiri, to national KPI means keep poverty increasing.
Oh, Tawhiri, you keep doing this. You're our chief sloganeer and pun master.
The pun master 2000. Mr. Arvids for $5 thank you says seems Ian Taylor did a follow-up on his KPIs in the ODT. Maybe time for that follow-up. I haven't seen that. We'll have a look at the ODT. We've got Ian's been on before. We can probably get him back on again. And Peter says this government is a bunch of ghouls. They are ghouls, Chewy. Yes. Rotang says they're too used to telling Māori what's good for them as opposed to listening to Māori saying what they need. Age-old scenario. Yep. Very, very good. Okay. So the last topic of the night, unless there's anything else you want to pick up on that, Chewy, in particular?
No. I think we've covered that quite well.
This is real interesting. This is a story on RNZ, right? And there's a 4-minute interview. Well, it's actually a story they've done with lots of different opinions that we're going to have a look at. This is a really interesting take out of RNZ. Should New Zealand treat misogyny as extremism? New Zealand should consider following the UK's lead in classifying a form of misogyny as extremism, an expert says. Politicians have also weighed in, with one saying she does not want to see restrictions on free speech. Can you guess what political party she's from? It comes as the UK Home Office undertakes a review of its counter-extremism strategies in an attempt to crack down on harmful ideologies online and offline. University of Auckland senior lecturer Dr. Chris White said extreme misogynistic violence was increasing globally. Now, it's a very good article by RNZ. It's about 4 minutes long, but they get all sorts of opinions and takes on this. Let's have a bit of a listen.
Misogyny could be considered its own form of extremism under new laws in the UK. It's all part of a review of the country's counter-extremism strategies, targeting hateful ideologies online and offline. So should New Zealand do the same? Ellen O'Dwyer reports.
University of Auckland senior lecturer Dr. Chris Wilson believes extreme misogynistic violence is increasing globally.
The abuse that you see online appears to be increasing. There have been a growing number of violent events that appear targeted at women.
He says the Bondi Junction mall attack, in which Joel Couchy killed 5 women and 1 man, injuring 9 women and 2 men, is an example. Here's New South Wales Police Commissioner Karen Webb speaking to the ABC in the aftermath of the attack.
It's obvious to me, it's obvious to detectives that seems to be an area of interest that the offender had focused on women and avoided the men. As you know, and has been reported, 5 of the deceased are women, and the majority of victims in hospital are also women.
Police in the UK have described the threat of influencer Andrew Tate to radicalise young boys as a national emergency. The UK government is now considering classifying extreme misogyny in its counter-extremism plans to target harmful ideologies. Chris Wilson says New Zealand should consider doing the same.
This is not about curtailing free speech or placing sanction on people for saying particular forms of speech. It's about being able to identify those individuals who appear to be on a path towards violence.
A New Zealand Security Intelligence Service spokesperson told RNZ the agency already considers violent misogyny under its existing framework. But Chris Wilson is...
I'm interested as well, Chewy. Right, we're talking about violent misogyny, which I guess what they're saying is it's an aspect of misogyny, not just all misogyny overall. And the example they gave about the killing and injuring of sounds like 90% female to male victims. Is it the killing, and the action of harm that is the extremism, or is it the misogyny that's behind it? And how do you legislate on that? So it's really interesting conversation, because if it wasn't misogyny, if it was a woman who had done that to the other woman, then it would be the action of the death that would be considered the extremism. So is it the action of the deaths, or is it the ideology behind those actions that gets labeled the extremism? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see people in the chat really chewing this over at the moment as well. Like, I think how to form my thoughts. I think they're right in identifying a potential threat.
Yep.
And that the way that, like, people often, there's a couple of people in the chat mentioning Andrew Tate and people of his ilk.
Yeah.
This really toxic form of masculinity, and I guess what we've seen overseas with incels and that sort of thing, that seem to think that the world owes them female companionship, and the only reason that these people haven't been issued a woman is because the unfairness of it all. And overseas, they've had people drive cars into crowds, go on stabbing rampages. There's been attacks on universities and that sort of thing from that ideology. So there is a threat there. There is a risk of that. So speech often leads to action.
Yeah.
And this is why we have conversations about hate speech. I think misogyny, or this extreme misogyny, comes under that umbrella of hate speech quite handily. And I think it's the discussion of including it in that, I think, is very worthy. And just because something like that hasn't really happened here doesn't mean that we don't get to talk about it before it happens.
No, but I think you've identified the concept, right? Speech leads to actions. So do you criminalize the speech, or do you criminalize the actions? Because if people have the speech that doesn't lead to violent actions, so that's where in that continuum do you draw it? I mean, they always talk about hate speech, and they always talk about, that it's credible threats are a crime. So this is, I mean, and with me, there's no such thing as a free speech purist. Don't believe anyone who tries to tell you that, right? Everyone has lines somewhere, and my line would always lean towards more speech than less, but there are definitely lines. And this is one of those conversations, is where does society draw that line? Because there's got to be lines somewhere.
Because I mean, look, I haven't spent a lot of time listening to Andrew Tate. I'm certainly aware of him and some of the things that he's spoken about. And I think he is a misogynist, rapist, sex trafficker, just a grab bag of horrible, horrible traits. But I don't know if he has gone to the point of, say, making an active threat or a call to action for people that follow his ideology to do these things.
Yeah.
And I think that's the line that is it's the fuzzy gray line where we go, okay, well, no one has specifically given a call to action or an instruction to people, so then they should be able to say what they like. But we get to that point where people going, I'm not telling people to do this, but certainly wish someone would. The people that know that they can get away with that. And I don't have an answer to that.
Something that intrigues me.
You go too far down that line.
You've brought up that the comedy show about the evangelical American thing. Mike says, would it affect misogyny in religion? That's a really interesting question. Because within some sects, cults, religions, whatever, the way that the man is seen as the absolute authority above all the women, it's a really, because I love a religion conversation. That to me is a really interesting conversation. And let's keep going. It's got a couple of minutes to go, and then there's something I want to play you, because this does have Nicola Willis in it, and I just want to remind us of what this National Party actually thinks of misogyny. Certainly did think of misogyny before it seems maybe the leader was slapped with a wet bus ticket by all the women, all the females in his cabinet.
Says extreme misogyny deserves its own category so that more resources and attention are directed at stopping it. He believes misogynistic threats against female leaders in New Zealand are increasing.
We saw with Jacinda Ardern, it's the number of death threats. I think 9 were actually brought to court. I mean, that's a major indicator that, no male colleagues.
Yeah, credible. And they were taken to court, they were credible.
Get that.
RNZ approached 2 female academics to speak on misogyny and extremism, who said they couldn't out of fear of the abusive backlash they'd get. Porirua Mayor Anita Baker says she got death threats a couple of years ago when she tried to introduce a paid parking rule in the city. She says she tries to push it to the back of her mind.
Because that's worthy of a death threat. Extra coins in a machine when you park outside the bakery. That's about the level of anger you should get to warrant a death threat.
But it changed the way she lives.
I don't like going home at night by myself, if my husband's away, and I am more cautious now at night when I'm out. I don't want to walk distances by myself.
She says it's often difficult to deal with the constant flow of misogynistic abuse when it's sent anonymously online. Finance Minister and Deputy Leader of the National Party, Nicola Willis, agrees.
The B word and the C word, those words don't get thrown around for men, and they are inherently, I think, sexist words. I'd also observe that the people who often make these attacks choose anonymity to hide themselves, which I think demonstrates that they know that expressing their views in that way is socially unacceptable, but they go ahead and do it anyway.
But she says she's hesitant to follow the UK's lead in classifying a form of misogyny as extremism under any law change.
I'm inherently uncomfortable and cautious when it comes to any form of censorship or restrictions to free speech. I think we have to be very careful before we embark on any path like that. And I sincerely think that right now one of the most powerful things that we can do to stop this behaviour is simply calling it out.
A New Zealand SIS spokesperson said the agency is aware of the abhorrent misogynistic views being spread in the community every day. The spokesperson said the majority of extremist threats made online aren't acted on, but that the agency works with police to investigate individuals and groups which could pose a threat to national security.
There you go. One thing I want to say, and it's not to actually take away from what Nicola Willis just said, but she said the B word and C word aren't used for men. I mean, like, I'm not trying to say you're wrong and whitewash that conversation, but I think guys get called bitches and cunts all the time. I mean, like, especially like if you lived in Australia, you can be a good cunt. It's a kind of saying, but maybe what she's saying is it's more aggressive when it's used towards women. I don't know.
I think there is a tone difference in the way that certainly a lot like the stuff directed at say female politicians seems to be a lot more vicious, has a lot more venom behind it. It's a hard thing to nail down. I think I just keep coming back to this sort of stuff that it should definitely come under the umbrella of hate speech. I think there is definitely a conversation about, where the line is and how hard that is to pinpoint. Like, and then once you've pinpointed it, what are the steps? What happens then? We're obviously not talking about SWAT teams rappelling in and black bagging you off to a re-education camp. But where do you start to apply a bit of a handbrake or a redirection before we get to outward calls to violent action?
Yeah,
and people acting on those. Like, you go to some of the shittier parts of the internet, 4chan and worse, into those incel the areas. It's a feedback loop. Like one of the great things about the internet is it lets everybody find their own tribe, right? One of the worst things about the internet is it lets everyone find their tribe.
Yeah.
And if you have a feedback loop of people going, yeah, all women are bitches and cunts and none of them want to fuck me, so I'm just going to go on a murder rampage because it's all gone wrong for me. You swap out female and put in blacks, Jews, whatever. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It is the same thing. It is someone that life has not been kind to. It is someone that has things that are not going their way for whatever reason. And they need someone to blame, and they need to get some power back through the wrong methods.
I remember saying a few times that, you know, it's interesting how the right is so interested in things like misogyny and how female politicians are treated now, because I well remember, and now I'm not saying it was Brooke Van Velden, but it was females from the right when they were talking about Jacinda Ardern going, oh, it's not too bad for me, that sort of thing. But I want to remind people that was very much, for fairness, Nicola Willis has always kind of called out what she said. She's called it out. But I just want to remind people, this is, what date is this? This is January of last year. Okay, January of last year. And this is the now Prime Minister kind of pushing back against, maybe it's not about, the abuse is not about women. And then obviously, I suspect maybe some of the women in his cabinet got to him and said, yeah, you better pull your head in. And he does. But this was the origin story. This is the original thoughts of Christopher Luxon about, is there such a thing as misogyny?
It's right now. Bit of a thing yesterday with old Jacinda. That was a bit of a surprise. Yeah, it was a shock. I don't blame her. Not everyone was gassed for the Nats. This woman pulling the fingers, yelling, "National sucks." A middle finger much less threatening than the misogynistic abuse Jacinda Ardern received.
Did that play any role in your decision to walk away?
No, it did not. And my strong message to women in leadership and girls who may be considering leadership in the future, this is a place where foundation is being laid long before me to make it possible for us to be in these roles.
While Jacinda Ardern denies that the mass of misogynistic vitriol levelled at her fed into her decision to quit, it was prolific. Not that the national leader would acknowledge that this morning. Telling Radio New Zealand it was about politics, not personality.
Do you think it is different for women, for female politicians?
Look, I'm not sure about that. I think, what we're trying to make sure is that the country, you've seen other countries around the world where you actually get this just deep polarization of political views.
He should know better.
So this is important. I'm going to play it again because he does change his tune, but I always think it's important to get like the origin story of someone. So 18 months ago, when asked, do women in the public eye get it, harder than men do, his basic response was, don't think so, right? So this is his core belief that then got massaged by whatever PR company, and we'll see that before the end of the clip.
Do you think it is different for women, for female politicians?
Look, I'm not sure about that. I think, what we're trying to make sure is that the country, you've seen other countries around the world where you actually get this just deep polarization of political views.
He should know better. He's talked about being a role model in his own conduct. He could role model being a support for women and challenging and calling out that behaviour and saying it's not okay.
Mere hours later, Luxon walked back his comments.
I think there is an element of gendered abuse that happens with female politicians.
What's just so grating about this for me is at no point does he kind of go, oh, guys, look, I've had to think about it, and this morning I got it wrong. This is your absolute politician on talking points. He said what he believed, and then he said the opposite hours later without any reflection on what he'd said that morning, without any apology. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry this morning. I've evolved. I've had a chat with a few people and I was wrong. That part of the conversation never happened. He just went, da, 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 da. I don't think so. Oh, women, they have a really hard time. It's the ugliest part of politics. So this is This is his road to Damascus, talking of come to Jesus, his road to Damascus experience. And all of a sudden, you know, he's woke.
Okay. Mere hours later, Luxon walked back his comments.
I think there is an element of gendered abuse that happens with female politicians that is different from what we experience as men, I think.
Us men need to stand up and address it. It shouldn't be left to women to have to defend misogynist and sexist attacks on their own.
Luxon's deputy Nicola Willis isn't spared from the misogyny.
I think it's worst for me when people call into question my ability to be a good mother. That hurts.
There's no doubt about it. Yep, women get more gendered vilification, particularly online.
So the afternoon, did you hear the sentence? There's no doubt about it. That sounds like someone who has held this honest held belief for a long time. They know the research. They're aware of it. Oh, but a few hours ago, it was like, yeah, I'm not sure about that. And then there's no doubt about it. Like, I applaud people for evolving.
Hours ago.
Yeah. I applaud people for evolving, and I actually applaud Luxon for having the correct position now, but still just the disingenuous nature of you know why he's got there, and no self-reflection at all. Remember, this was his original thoughts prior to being Prime Minister.
My ability to be a good mother. That hurts.
There's no doubt about it. Yep, women get more gendered vilification, particularly online.
Something Luxon should have known and acknowledged immediately.
Yeah, there you go. So there you go, Joey. Just to add to the conversation, I wanted us to remember it's not quite as black and white as when the current right were in opposition. They didn't have such a big concern around it, as was evident there by Luxon. But, you know, to her credit, and obviously why? Because she's a victim of it. Nicola Willis, on some level, has always kind of played that. It's absolutely hard line. So good on her.
Yeah. My fantasy here is that he's made that statement, and every woman in his party goes, "Hey, boss, I'm just sending you through a folder that I keep on my desktop of all the emails that I get.
Yeah.
If you just read through it, and maybe, you know, if you get a chance to speak to the camera again, maybe bear that in mind." Like, yeah. His first statement strikes me, it's never come across his mind. Why would he? Why would it?
Yeah, because he's not a victim of it.
And look, we see it sometimes here in the chat as well. It's easy. It's low-hanging fruit. Like, and I think as much as I don't like Nicola Willis, as much as I think she's a terrible finance minister, and as much as I think she's made some horrible decisions, I'm not going to sit here and go, that fucking bitch must be a terrible mother. That's just, but you go in a comment section and you will see comments from people that are nominally on the left that will echo those comments and say something like it, and they need to be called out. And I'm not both siding this. I think female politicians on the left would get it a lot more.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying here is the left is not guilty, is not guilt-free on this either.
Yep. Yep. No, 100%. And look, I mean, yeah. No, I just think 100%. That's absolutely what I agree. It's true. Wu Ming, thank you for your super chat. Let's start using Angusum Borbag instead. Angusum Borbag.
Yeah, I'm all. Let's get more creative with our insults. Let's get away from, you know, cunt, bitch, whatever. Let's come up with some truly confusing original insults.
Shakespeare's a great place to go and find some insults. My favorite always was "go shake your ears." That was my favorite Shakespearean insult. I loved it. Mr. Arvis says David Seymour is a B and a huge C. A BC and a huge C. Mr. Alex, thank you for the $10. Just wanted to let any listeners know from Loberhart that the Cross Valley and Petone to Granada link, and who could be affected, that good luck, as it has received funding. It is a NZTA project. Dun, 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 dun. Just our weekly update from Mr. Alex about the Cross Valley situation. And thank you for the super chat. All right. I wanted to show you one other thing, Joey. I'll show you one other thing. I was going to bring this up when, as part of the misogynistic conversation, when Nicola Willis talked about people who are hidden, like anonymous people. If you get a chance to watch this, there is a YouTube special, Brené Brown, The Call to Courage. Brené Brown is like a motivational speaker and a bit of a guru. You know, she did the super spiritual Saturdays with Oprah and that kind of stuff. Written a ton of books, and she's she is a shame researcher, so she knows all sorts of things about shame. We came across this last night and we watched it, and it's well worth a watch. You know, if you're a big hairy man, you can check it out too. But there was something that she said in it, and I think that it's quite pertinent to these trolls who are anonymous on the internet. And I felt personally it's quite appropriate to what I guess you and I sometimes see, Chewy, when people basically want to come out from the darkness and tell us how everything we're doing is wrong. And this is what she said, right? This is a quote. She's talking about being in the game. If you're not in the arena getting your ass kicked on occasion because you were being brave, I am not interested in or open to your feedback about my work.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and I just thought, I know it's not quite the same, but there's a paraphrase about this for anybody. Like, if you're just a troll sitting in your mother's basement, as the right like to throw at us, Chewy, and just basically trolling, and you have no skin in the game, then we are not interested in or open to your feedback about what we're doing. And I think that kind of goes a little bit hand in hand with the misogynistic conversations, you know, because there are a lot of incel trolls there who aren't in the game, who are sitting behind their computers just being incel trolls. Well, if you're not going to come out into the game and risk getting shot down by women, you know, and risk and be vulnerable to being a part of a community where you have to figure out what it's like to traverse this world having a male-female relationship. If you're not going to play that game, then we are not interested in or open to your feedback about that part of the world. It was a lovely quote. I sent it out as a tweet today, and I think it's really good.
I mean, I'm not even going to draw parallels between things that have been said about me since I've been doing this whole BHN thing, because it's not even in the same league as what we're talking about. But I do find it funny when people with no profile image criticize my appearance.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, you must be a work of art. Where's your profile image? You know, that sort of thing. And actually one that I saw just before we went to air, because one of our clips is being shared on Reddit at the moment. Okay. And somebody went, why would I watch this clip with two Redditors voicing their opinions over everything? And I just wanted to go, two things. There's only one Redditor that's putting the reckons out. I don't think you're on Reddit. Second of all, bro, you're on Reddit. You're a Redditor. It's just some of these these insults. You know, oh, you must be doing it from your mum's basement. No, it's a spare room in my house that I own.
It is my basement though, so I'm doing it from my basement. So you're half right.
So that's why I don't speak for you.
Yeah. I can see that people are talking about YouTubers and Netflix. If I just call that a YouTube special, then yes, it should be as the images. There is a Netflix special called Brené Brown, The Call to Courage. And I mean, I get some people in there go, oh, she'd hate being called a motivational speaker. I know. I don't exactly know how to label her. It's very, very funny though. It's all, I mean, my partner was watching it, and she was like, this feels a bit like a stand-up comedy special. It's very funny. There's lots of very funny takes by her and very funny stories being taken, and I think it's well worth watching if you want to check it out. I couldn't recommend it highly enough. Yeah, we got that a bit last week, Chewy, what you were talking about. I'm assuming it might be the same thing, because you know the working group had a video taken down and we still had it up, and there were several people in our clips going, oh, stop talking over it. And I said a couple of times, oh, we're a news commentary show. This is kind of what we do. If this is not your vibe, then we're probably not the channel for you. This is exactly how we operate. Just because you want to come here and see the source material for the first time ever, and we're not for you. You go and find the source material. The source material has been taken down. Oh, well. I guess you have to put up with us then. Anyway, that's us. We're done for that, unless there's anything else you want to add in, Chewy?
No, I'm not going to do a tangent. I did my tangent at the top of the show with the cartoons. Staying on message.
Now, I think you'll notice, actually, that there has been a significant tail put into our credits because of all the people that signed up this week. Patreon.com/Big Hairy News.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work out what they can afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting peas from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a war path to run, linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a self and a higher mind. All have a lean either this way or that, and will be analyzed by both Chewy and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's Big Hairy News.
All right, team, thanks for being with us. Yeah, I only just remembered Nala's with me for the night, so just chucked her off. She can just do the credits with us. That's about it. She's having a sleep in the corner.
No.
All right, team, thanks for being with us tonight. We'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of the Big Hairy News. Thank you to all the people who have contacted us about the idea of expansion. Chewy, I've been sending you those emails. Hopefully you've seen them as well. Yep. And yeah, exciting times, team. Thank you for being a part of what we do. Patreon.com/Big Hairy News. These are all our lovely patrons at the moment. And that's it from me. We'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another live edition of Big Hairy News. Hooroo from me.
Cheers, fam.